So this is our intro, our inaugural, excuse me. I'd say teaser podcast for the Zip Code Bros. Why we are called the Zip Code Bros? Jamie, where you from?
Nebraska.
Nebraska. Adam, where you from?
South Carolina.
South Carolina. I am in Post Falls, Idaho, but Mr. Ben Jones.
Perth, Australia.
Perth, Australia. So we have the ability to go zip codes around the world. So therefore, we are the Zip Code Bros. So what we want to do is we wanted the audience to perhaps get to know each other a little bit or know us a little bit. So Jimmy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into wrestling, maybe your favorite wrestler growing up?
I am 25 years old. Born and raised in Kearney, Nebraska. I had step cousins that were into wrestling, and my first show watching on tape was WrestleMania 22, and the match that got me was Vince McMahon versus Shawn Michaels in a no holds barred match. And I've been in love with wrestling ever since I was 8 years old.
So is that your first wrestling memory, Shawn Michaels versus Vince McMahon?
Yes, sir.
All right, and what'd you think about it? What got you hook, line, and sinker about that match?
I'm gonna shove your teeth down your throat.
My favorite part of that match was when he put the garbage can over Vince,
Yes.
laid him on the table, and elbow dropped him right through.
It was a setup to that. It was
Who was your favorite wrestler growing up?
John Cena.
I'm sorry, Jimmy, say it again. I can't see you.
John Cena.
John Cena. You are right in that area, not area code. You're right in that time frame. I love it. So were you one of those guys who would just chant, "Let's go Cena, Cena sucks" for the sake of doing it? Or did you get pissed off when people said Cena sucks?
I got pissed off when people said Cena sucks, or I got pissed off on a lot of things, but I guess that was one of the least things. I was like, he's okay. I'm like, I was just a kid, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, Jimmy, I know a lot more about you than most people do, but you and your mom also share a bond with wrestling, right?
My mom, my brother, like I said, I fell in love with her when I was 8 years old. My mom has been supportive of me so much that for her 51st birthday last year, in June 20th, 2022, we went to a Monday Night Raw, and she was able to cross off something off her bucket list.
That's awesome. So Jimmy, in our episode format, Jimmy's going to do show and tell. Jimmy's got a bunch of amazing things that he can show us. Jimmy, we're not going to hear the story now, but what I want you to do is, if you can, I want you to show us your first show and tell.
You'll get it. You'll get it once I can get to it.
We're live, pal.
This drawing, I got from a young individual after.
Spoil it. No, we're not going to spoil it.
After a wrestling show.
All right. So James, do you have anything else to add about you, your introduction, anything else you want our audience to know? All two of them being my parents.
I have one of the biggest hearts you'll ever meet.
I will agree with that. Jimmy, thank you for your time, sir. Mr. Adam Jefferson.
Yes.
I got to know you a little bit. You've been all around the country. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into wrestling? Who was your favorite wrestler growing up?
So born in Jacksonville, Florida. Just real quick, lived in Florida, Connecticut, Alabama, Ohio, Mississippi, Texas, and now currently living in South Carolina. got into pro wrestling by sneak watching it when I was in middle school. My parents were a little protective of me, didn't really want me watching wrestling to begin with, just started to kind of try and sneakily watch it. Got caught, and when I got caught, they're just like, well, you're watching it anyway. What harm can it do at this point? So I got into wrestling a little later in the game. I am 29, and much like Jimmy, John Cena is my favorite wrestler. I'm sure if I had watched it earlier, at an earlier age, it'd be a different answer. But because of when I started, John Cena is definitely my favorite wrestler. My first wrestling memory when I started to sneak watch was watching the whole Lita and Kane and Unholy Baby storyline play out, and the whole Snitsky, it's not my fault, and punting the baby into the stands and all that. So it's been a bit of a more unique intro into wrestling, watching the dude punt a baby and things like that. But I love the athleticism. I love the storytelling. A good character can hook me in real fast. So that's that's kind of my background into wrestling, and big history nerd too. So I love watching the older stuff and going back through and seeing how some of the storylines then affect now, and where guys were before they became big stars and things like that.
What's your first memory of wrestling? Is it the Kane and Lita thing, or do you have a specific first memory that you were sneaking, or whatever the case was?
Did you lie, cheat, or steal?
My first legitimate memory, I had a friend in first grade who did watch it, and he had a WWF lunchbox with like Stone Cold and The Rock and all that on it. And he told me, Stone Cold, this guy named Stone Cold Steve Austin kicked his boss in the stomach. And I was like, okay, sounds cool. But I had no context. But that's my first real wrestling memory. But other than that, the Kane Lita thing really stands out, because that's about when I did start to sneak watch it.
And how old were you at that point?
I was probably 6th or 7th grade, maybe, if I remember right.
So you're 12, 13 years old, maybe 11, 12?
Yeah.
So before you got into it, when you saw your buddy's lunchbox, like, what was your initial thoughts about wrestling?
My initial thoughts were it looked cool. Stone Cold with, the leather vest, and, it had his kind of fist up like that, so I definitely thought it was cool. I just knew at least asking for permission was not going to work out, even first grade.
So after you saw the lunchbox, did you have any inkling that you wanted to kick your teacher in the stomach?
No, I was a little goody two shoes. I was wild at home than I was in school. So I didn't really want to beat up on my teachers or anything like that. But
how about classmates?
Oh, for sure. You kidding me? Some of those people I went to school with, I still want to kick them in the stomach.
Stomach or just a little bit lower?
Maybe just a little bit lower.
The breadbasket.
I got one more question. Did you ever did people ask you, why do you like that so much? It's fake, or they're on steroids? Did you get asked that question quite a bit? Yeah,
especially in middle school and all that. Definitely got asked that. And another core memory for me when it comes to wrestling is I knew some of it wasn't as real as it was portrayed, but I thought the storylines were at least real. The characters were at least real up until actually the Chris Benoit tragedy. I really thought Vince McMahon got blown up in a limousine, and then Chris Benoit died, and I run upstairs to watch Raw to see how that whole mystery is going to play out. And there's Vince on TV. So that's kind of where it shattered a little bit for me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just a little bit younger than you, and I thought the exact same thing. But for years, in high school, I got asked why do you watch that? They're on steroids, right? Or why do you watch that fake stuff? To the point, I got asked that so many times, I had thought about bringing a sledgehammer or taking a steel chair to some people's faces.
All right. So Adam, your segment on our episode is going to be This Week in Pro Wrestling History. Do you happen to have any This Week in Pro Wrestling Histories that you can pull up for us real quick?
I actually do.
Awesome.
Gonna hit some highlights. February 26, 1997, for the first time ever, Monday Night Raw is recorded in Europe. From Berlin, Germany, this episode of Raw saw the British Bulldog become the first ever WWF European champion by beating his brother-in-law and fellow World Tag Team Champion Owen Hart. February 27th, 2000.
I remember watching that live, actually, that
Oh yeah.
that match. That's how old I am, to give you an idea of how long I've been watching.
February 27th, 2000. Cactus Jack was forced to retire after losing a Hell in a Cell match to Triple H in the main event of No Way Out. Of course, Foley would return less than a month later as part of the main event for WrestleMania 2000. February 27th, 2014, NXT Arrival airs live on the network, on the WWE Network. This is the first ever live event streamed on the WWE Network. February,
That's a great little piece.
Yeah, it is. I thought that was. So are these last two right here. February 28th, 2000, and probably one of the more infamous Attitude Era skits. Mae Young gives birth to a hand.
Oh, that's something we can't unsee.
Yeah, I've gone back and watched the episode of Raw. That's definitely something that you're not really going to get out of your head. March 1st, 1998, ECW's Living Dangerously pay-per-view airs, and that's where the famous clip of Bam Bam Bigelow and Taz crash through the ring. Also where the fans throw a bunch of styrofoam heads into the ring to tribute Al Snow for beating Chris Candido. And I thought this was cool. The same site where I got all this from also would include notable wrestling birthdays. So I wrote some of those down as well. Pentagon Jr. was born on February 26, 1985. Vern Gagne, February 26, 1926. The Murder Hawk Lance Archer, February 27th, 1977. The Dragon Ricky Steamboat, February 28th, 1953. Norman Smiley, or Norman Smiley, depending on what era you're talking about. February 28th, 1965. Kyle O'Reilly was born on March 1st, 1987, and a year before he was born, Big E was born March 1st, 1986. Scotty Riggs was also born March 1st, 1967, and to round it all out, Booker T was born March 1st, 1965.
Nice. So Gagne would have been 97 years old had he still been alive. That's awesome.
That's crazy.
That's awesome. Adam, is there anything else that you would like us to know about yourself?
Man, I coach high school football. I'm a big sports junkie. I definitely love football. Outside of football and wrestling, the one thing I love more than anything in this world are my wife and my two kids. I've got a 3-year-old son and a currently 3-month, almost 4-month-old daughter.
That's awesome. Well, good luck, and I appreciate you giving us the background. Thank you for thank you for allowing us to get to know you. Can't talk today. Getting to know you a little bit. I appreciate that. All right, Mr. Jones.
Yes. So
My man.
I'm 45. Yeah. So I'm 45. Always lived in Perth. I'm a disability support worker. I have twin boys that are 9, and they've both got autism. I started watching wrestling when I was 8. It was actually the main event of WrestleMania 1. That's what did it for me. I remember I was a huge fan of the A-Team TV show. And I remember my dad actually said, "Did you know that he's going to be in a real fight?" I was like, "What?" And of course, it was, him tagging with Hulk Hogan. So, yeah, that was my introduction to wrestling. And then when I was watching that match, I found myself not watching Mr. T as much because I was fascinated about Hulk Hogan. He just kind of was like a superhero on the screen. And then I was hooked. So,
what's your earliest wrestling memory? Whether it's that particular one or maybe you watched it in passing.
It was probably that match, but then not long after that, I remember those LJN figures came out. You know, the big rubber ones that first came out.
Oh yeah.
You know, back in 85 or 84, 85. So yeah, had a few of those to play with, and my cousin, who's 4 years older than me, he was into wrestling as well. So we used to sort of play fight and do the moves, and yeah. So that's my introduction.
I like it. I like it. So your section, I mean, your segment of our format is going to be, what is it going to be? I love you to introduce your own segment.
It is well, inspired by the Kick Out Crew's Waka Waka segment.
Shout out to the Kick Out Crew.
It's going to be Jonesy's jokes. So they're going to be ridiculously bad dad jokes.
So do you have one or two for us right now that you can tease us with?
I have one.
And when I say tease us, I mean try not to have people turn off the podcast.
Pressure. Okay. So this is a wrestling related joke that I came up with. Okay.
Okay.
So I was on the freeway the other day and I looked behind me and it was the Undertaker. Couldn't believe it. But then he drove past, cut me off. And I thought, damn it, he just turned into the Overtaker.
So maybe we can get something where we can have a little sound effect.
I like that. I like that.
I like that.
Anyway.
I mean, that would be pretty cool. Because here's the thing. That's actually that's a pretty clever joke.
Yeah. That's all right. We start off here and then we go up. So
I love it. I love it. So one other thing that you know, Ben and I were talking about doing was, while we do our intros, maybe like a mental health check. And this could be something that you guys can share as much as you like, or you guys can share as little as you'd like. Now, the first one, I think I'll get into my mental health background on the first one. But really what I want to do is go around and just kind of, Jimmy, how was your week? How you feeling? You know, again, don't have to get into much of your background, but just how you feeling this week? It's Wednesday. We're almost at the end of the week.
Hey, Gallagher,
Gallagher,
just before we go into that, can you introduce yourself?
Well, you want to introduce me, Captain Charisma? Yeah, I'm only kidding. So, I mean, my name is Mike Gallagher. I've been a wrestling fan since I was about 8 years old. My Uncle Donald was a huge wrestling fan, and he's about 16, 17 years older than I am. So I remember my first memory was SummerSlam 1990, Demolition versus the Hart Foundation. The 2 out of 3 falls match for the tag team titles. That was my first wrestling memory. I was watching it with my uncle. We had taped it was probably sometime in September. He taped SummerSlam. And I just remember the VHS that said SummerSlam 1990 on it. We popped it into the VHS player. And as we're watching it, I saw these 2 jacked up guys with face paint all over face paint all over. But more importantly, and I know Jimmy's going to snicker a little bit, but one of my first favorite wrestlers was Bret the Hitman Hart. And because of that match, that Hart Foundation match, because I watched this guy, him and Neidhart, and how Neidhart was this brute who just beat everybody up. But Bret Hart was smaller than everybody else, but you believed him because he knew how to get somebody off their feet. He knew how to work a body part. And I was just mesmerized, right? And then when the LOD came out, because Axe came out, and those Dastardly Demolition was 3-on-2, and then here come the Road Warriors, and I'm just like, I was hooked, man. I was hooked. And then the next match I watched was the Rockers versus Power and Glory, and I saw a gentleman named Shawn Michaels and another gentleman named Marty Jannetty. So between Bret Hart, Marty Jannetty, and Shawn Michaels, I was hooked. And if you guys saw the Kick Out Crew episode that I was on, we covered the Marty Jannetty versus Shawn Michaels at the Royal Rumble match. And I mean, you could tell the excitement I had watching that, the passion I had coming out, because those were my guys. And when Michaels became a champion and when Bret became champion, it was awesome. But what I enjoyed was I enjoyed watching wrestling with my brother, and that was something that we had a chance to do. And I definitely broke his nose once, giving him a drop kick. Um, and then we were never we were never allowed to watch it together again. But like you, Adam, I used to sneak it. My dad played in the band, and my mom worked Saturday morning. So my dad would get home 4 or 5 in the morning on Saturday morning, and then I'd watch Wrestling Superstars while he was sleeping. And like you said, asking for forgiveness was a lot easier than asking for permission. And my segment on the show is going to be Mike's Music Corner. And what I plan on talking about is either a band or a song or a topic. So, for an example, like a cover song, me and my buddy always like to talk about who did it better, right? So, for an example, the Beatles with a little help from my friends. Joe Cocker covered that. I personally love the Beatles to death. I think Joe Cocker did a better version of that song. So, I would love to talk about something like that.
Well, I got I got a music question for you real quick.
Yeah.
Behind Blue Eyes, who did it better, Linkin Park or the Who? Not Linkin Park.
Limp Bizkit?
Limp Bizkit or the Who?
The Who. Yeah, the Who. The Limp Bizkit's version is nice, because it is like so freaking dark and moody and broody. But I mean, you always kind of defer to the original, unless the secondary version is just so much different, so much just like Bischoff says, right? Different than. But I feel like I've been talking a long time, so let's kind of. I want to kind of continue to move on. Jimmy, how's your week been?
Good. And I just talk about memories and moments. That's what wrestling does to a lot of us. There was actually been quite a few times where, one time I actually got power bombed through the side of the couch by my older brother.
Dom.
Mhm.
I had a chance to meet Jimmy's two sisters and his brother while we were down in San Antonio, and just as great. Yeah, when we went down for the Rumble, but just as great as a person as Jimmy, just as welcoming. Yeah, fantastic people.
And he also gave me a kidney. There was one time we were wrestling down in St. Joe, Missouri, and things got heated to the point where he kidney shotted me with
Oh,
a fist. I'm like,
oh.
I'm 10, he's 14. He kidney shots me, and I'm out for like 15 minutes, shaking to the point where they almost called the ambulance.
Oh boy. Well, in the interest of everybody's time right now, Adam, how's your week been? How's your head feeling?
Man, my week's been good. Teaching middle school PE though, it can really kind of get to you. Just so it's been stressful from last week, and it's kind of carried over into this week now. Had a little dose of parent guilt this evening, laying my son down. Was just kind of stressed out, kind of yelled at him over something I shouldn't have yelled at him about. And I tucking him in and just told him, look, I'm sorry I yelled at you. Just know that no matter how angry or frustrated or grumpy I get, I'm going to love you forever, and it's not going to change anything. And he said, he was like, yeah, because we're best buddies forever. And I was like, sure are, buddy. Let's lay here together. Just you and me. But no, other than that, good. I did have a panic attack last night.
No.
I've been having anxiety and all that just out of nowhere. And I'm taking the steps to find a therapist that can work with the schedule that coaching high school football brings, and trying to better myself, not just obviously for me, but for my wife and kids.
Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome.
Yeah, no problem.
Ben, how about you? How's your week been?
It's been a little slow. I'm actually looking for some more work at the moment, and it's been a bit challenging, but I've got a couple of good leads, so I hope that leads to something. I'm not too worried about it, but it's, it does sort of knock you around a little bit when you're out of routine. So I'm just trying to keep busy and, but yeah, apart from that, everything's all right.
Good, good.
Yeah.
I had a panic attack myself a couple of days ago, Adam. I was so my ex-wife is she's an adjuster for a property. She's an adjuster for Liberty Mutual, and she works out of town a lot. So she's gone 3-4 weeks at a time, and then she'll be home for 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, 2 or 3 days, back out for 3 weeks, home for 3 or 4 days, back out for 2 weeks. So my kids are also autistic. Both of my children. I have a 10-year-old and I have a 4-year-old. So I don't sleep a lot when they get home. When they're home, they don't sleep a lot themselves. So one thing that I get very anxious about is my lack of sleep when they're home. And when I was home on Saturday night, I had a great day. I went out with my friend. I had Little League tryouts with Michael, who's my oldest. And but I got home I'd say about 6 o'clock, and I started getting in my head. I started thinking about what might happen, what's going to happen, and I started having a panic attack too. And so one thing that I do is I do see a therapist as well, and it took me about 3 months to find a good one. So keep at it. You'll find the one that's right. Even try some of these websites or these apps that offer these therapy sessions, because you can check out a few different people, and hopefully you can find somebody that works for you. But one thing that I have a tendency of doing all the time is getting in my head. And one thing that I've been struggling with is my job. My job has been very demanding lately. I'm also a homeowner's adjuster for a property claims company. And one of those things is that we're overworked, we're understaffed, and so it's been the anxiety with me has been pretty high. But I got to admit, knowing that we're going to do this has been really calming and soothing for this. But I appreciate you guys sharing that with us, because it's one thing that I'm hoping to accomplish on this podcast is not only allowing other people to get to know us, but maybe if somebody's struggling with their own mental health, or maybe if somebody's struggling with their own anxiety, maybe it'll give them a little push in the direction of, hey, listen, we're not the only people in the world that are going through this. There's a lot more people that experience this than we understand. And I would almost argue, more than a majority of the population in this world struggles with mental health, and probably a small majority of that majority actually get the help that they need. And I just think that this world would be such a better place if people just accepted everybody for who they are and accepted themselves for who they are. Because I know personally, I have a hard time accepting myself for who I am, especially lately. But hopefully this is a step in the right direction. And in the interest of our format, our outros, because I don't think we have any questions today, do we, Ben?
We don't, because I was going to just make mention that if anyone has questions for us, to hit us up on Twitter at ZipCode Bros, and just use the hashtag #AskZipCodeBros. Anything you want, and we'll answer it on future episodes.
Awesome. Mr. Sorensen.
I had one more thing to add to you.
Yeah, please.
Your wonderful message. Very much the main. Another thing to add too is just, I don't want anyone to ever think they are not enough. I lost my dad to suicide, and actually in a couple of weeks it'll be 4 years since I lost a coach. 6 years actually, 7 years. I lost a coach to suicide too. That they just they got in their head and they thought they didn't mean much to many people, or just know your problems aren't too big to get the help you need. And to those that will watch my phone is open. I don't care if it's 10 in the morning, 10 at night, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. My phone is always open. And if you can find someone that has that, please reach out no matter what time of day it is. Your life means so much more than you realize at that moment.
And you only got one.
You only
You
know.
only got one. But before I go, one thing that we
I
have
was
to
just-
do.
I was just going to
Ken.
quickly add, I was just going to quickly add to that is that if you are struggling, please reach out to somebody because there is someone there to help you, and don't be too proud or above your ego or whatever. If you need help, it's there. Get it if you
Please.
need it.
Absolutely. So our outros, we also got we just got a social media plug. One thing that is a rule in my house, Jimmy Sorensen got me this belt. Rule in my house is if this belt isn't spinning, you get up and you start spinning it. So as my outro, we're going to say we appreciate you guys tuning in. We hope you tune in for future episodes. And we are the Zip Code Bros.